Hello, and welcome to Sitter's Baked Goods. Today we're going to be doing my second video for Thanksgiving, pies. I'm going to be making a blueberry pie and 2 meat pies. So first we're going to get all of the pie shell done, and it's going to be real simple. This recipe is good for any types of pie. And this is a great example because I'm making a meat pie and a blueberry pie. Savory and sweet pie. And this shell works perfectly for both. So we're going to use rubbing in method, or we're going to just chop up this butter, put in our flour, add cold water with some eggs, just to get that nice yellow color. And there we go. Nice and easy. Make sure everything's super cold. You don't want the butter to be mixed in too much. Always use your fingertips. Don't use your palms, because again, we're trying to keep the butter in nice big chunks. So we're just gonna use our fingertips. Just like so. Once it gets to about this consistency, we're gonna get the egg and water together and then mix into our dough. Now make sure you go by weight, because I have 4 eggs here right now. I end up using 5 because it turns out my eggs were a little bit small for this one. If you're off by like 5 or 10 mils or grams, sorry, for eggs, just add that little bit extra of water, okay? Won't make it taste as good, but 5-10 grams won't matter much. And you need that liquid to make sure you get a nice big ball. So you see how I'm using one hand? Always use just one hand. You don't want to get both hands dirty yet. Use the first hand just to get it going, and then you can bring in your second hand once you're at a nice ball stage like this. Now this is a lot of crust pie shell because I need bottoms for 3 pies, 2 tops for the meat pies, and then lattice for the blueberry pie. And I'm going to get to test out my new takeout 10-inch pie shells, so that's cool. Now I'm just going to cut out some nice pieces. I know I need 3 main big bottoms, so make sure you get a lot of dough for the bottoms. And then 2 slightly smaller ones for the tops. So both end pieces on the cut log, I guess, will be the tops because they're slightly smaller than the rest. And then you're going to want to form them into a disc and wrap them and put them in the fridge to rest for half an hour to an hour. I'm doing this midday, so I let it rest for hours and hours. It doesn't really matter. Minimum though, 30 minutes. Somewhere around there. Almost done. Last one. Make sure you get everything though. So put a little bit of flour on there. You can scrape everything up. Just like so. And then put it onto your dough. Don't want to waste anything. That will also help when you bring it back out to roll it out, because it already has some flour on it. There we go. And now onto the blueberry. I like to use frozen blueberries because all the sugar gets concentrated when it gets frozen, which I like the taste of it. And it doesn't damage it too much to the point where the berries are like liquid. That's why it makes it perfect. So we're just going to mix the blueberries together with the sugar What the sugar does is it brings out the juices, which then we're going to use to make, sorry, not to make, but to thicken up with the spices and a little bit of butter for shine. And we're going to mix it back into the berries, which will make our filling nice and thick and not too runny. So we're just going to add a pinch, basically to taste. You determine what you like. And of course, a little bit of salt. Need just a little bit. You can actually add the salt to the berries. It does the same thing sugar does. And of course, we need a little bit of butter for the ending to get that beautiful shine. To thicken it up, we're going to make a cornstarch slurry. It's just cornstarch and water. Make sure it's fully mixed together before you pour it in, because it will separate when it just sits around for a bit. Now onto the meat pies. We're going to put a bay leaf in, and again, spices to taste. Cinnamon. With this meat pie, it's going to be for winter season, so I'm getting a nice earthy taste with cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg. I know it seems a bit weird to put that with beef and turkey, but because it's a winter pie, it gives you a nice warm feeling when you eat it. So with all the spices and that bay leaf, we're going to put garlic and onions together to sweat in the pot. And then once it's done sweating, we're going to add in potato, celery, and carrot. I have a bowl off to the side there where I'm putting all my waste so I can put it into the composter later. It's a nice trick to have so that at the end you just dump your bowl, do a quick rinse, because it's just vegetables. Obviously, if you're using rotten stuff, you'll have to wash it way better, but if it's just nice clean vegetables, you can just rinse it and it'll be back to normal use. So we're going to dice these onions to probably a small dice, maybe closer to a medium dice. Make sure you always use the claw when cutting to keep your hands away from that knife. You don't want to cut yourself. Don't be afraid of the knife, and make sure your knife is super sharp. I know that sounds dangerous, but a dull knife is what's going to cut you, because a dull knife is going to try and go through, but then go on an angle and move towards your hand. You do not want that. So make sure your knife is sharp, and don't be afraid. Get a nice clean cut. Always use the claw. You need to be very safe with this knife, but that also means you need to be very comfortable with this knife. As soon as you start hesitating on cuts, that's when you cut yourself. So with these celery, we're going to cut nice chunks. Basically anything from a small dice to medium dice to large dice for all the vegetables. Whatever you like. I prefer smaller dices for the garlic. Well, garlic's minced. But the onions, because I like that to be able to be spread throughout the whole thing. And then I like a nice chunks for the carrots, celery, and potato, so that you get nice vegetables. It's not like a paste in there. I hate when it's a paste. You want to be able to see and taste the vegetables. So we're just going to cut these carrots in half. And then cut them nicely. Always make sure once you've cut the carrots in half to put the flat side down so it's not rolling all over the place. That's another way you'll cut yourself. You see what I'm doing here? My hand is flat, not doing the claw. Be very careful. Do not do this. I'm just doing it to show you what not to do. And even though I'm doing it, see, I go back to the claw. If you were checking while I had my hand flat, my thumb is still kind of in the claw motion, so I'm still safe. But again, I don't want you cutting yourself. Always do the claw. And don't cut too much stuff that you're not comfortable with. If you're comfortable with cutting one stick of carrot at a time, do one stick of carrot at a time. Don't do what I just did and cut 8 at a time or however many it is. So yes, always the claw, because you see that knuckle? As long as you don't go above your hand, you'll never be able to cut yourself. Because you put the knife right up to the knuckle, and again, no cut. So with the potato, nice large dice. Be very careful with the potato because it likes to stick to your knife. And if you're trying to move around the knife with things sticking and push things off, it gets not so safe. Now when you stack potatoes, stack all of them except for one bottom piece or top piece, because it's not flat on both sides. You'll have an easier time of cutting yourself because it'll be rolling all over the place. This way it stays flat, you can get nice dice, and then you can just come back to that other piece, cut it. Not that difficult. See? Going back to it. Takes 2 seconds. Boom, boom, boom. Some nice meaty chunks. Beautiful. Now to the stove. Always use a little bit of oil. I like to put the spices in right now so that it starts to build into the flavor. If you put it in later, like with the salt and pepper, it doesn't make it that warm feeling when you eat it. So I like to just build the flavor. So we're just gonna sweat the onions and garlic. Also, very important, remember what the leaves of your bay leaf, or if you're making multiple pies, what the bay leaves look like, because later on you are going to want to make sure you remove that because it's like eating bark. You don't want to be eating bark. So we're going to put half beef, half turkey. This allows the vegetables come out because the turkey's a little softer in taste. And I'm also using lean beef and turkey because I don't want too much fat. Because again, the turkey's not so strong in taste. You get to taste the vegetables, and then everything gets to complement themselves, which is perfect for what I want. So we're gonna, in another pan, heat up some oil. Once the oil's heated up, then we'll put the beef in. Make sure you don't burn your onions. You want to just sweat. Just make them translucent. Put everything in. And of course mix it up. My hand's still dirty from when I just put it in, so I'm just going to use my hand. Just be careful. Hot pan. You should know. Perfect. Now you want to season both your meat and your vegetables. So I'm going to put a little bit of pepper here, a little bit of salt here, and then I'm going to season the vegetables to taste and make sure that I like that taste, because that's going to seep into the beef and turkey and make it taste amazing. Once your onions and garlic have sweat, add in your other vegetables, stir it up a bit, make sure you get that spices around throughout your other vegetables, and then add into your liquid. Now, depending on how much pies you're making, the liquid becomes a problem. Because you want it just to cover your vegetables, so you're going to need the same amount of liquid, but when you simmer for 10-15 minutes, what it takes to make all your vegetables al dente, which is have a little bite when you eat them, you're only losing a certain amount of liquid. So for example, I don't know the exact amount, but let's say I put a liter of chicken stock in, I might only lose 100 mils. If I put 500 mils in for 2 pies, I might still only lose 100 mils. So the difference is, later on, when you get multiple pies, you're going to have to discard some of that sauce. Or sorry, some of that chicken stock. Now you could reuse it for the next batch, so you can still use it, but you have to use it that day because it's touching a bunch of stuff. There's going to be a lot of stuff in there. Now for this beef and turkey, you see all that stuff? Get rid of it. See this jar? You don't want to put this down the sink because it will clog your sinks. It's all fat. So you want to put it in a jar and throw it out, or just throw it into your garbage. It is hot though, so I like to make sure it goes into a jar first. Make sure you don't spill. As you just saw, there's a little bit of beef on there. So this is now done. Make sure you remove this, because again, if someone bites into this, it's gonna be like eating bark, and they're gonna not want to come back to your bakery. So make sure you get a little piece. Perfect. Has a little bite to it. It's not like a paste when you put it in your mouth. Then we're going to just mix that into the meat. And again, if you feel like you have too much liquid, just strain it out or pour it out. Whatever is easiest for you. I'm just putting my blueberries here for now because they're still a bit frozen and I want more of their juices to come out. And this is a hot surface. I'm making sure it's not on directly the hot surface, but you know. So with all the spices and salt, we're now going to hover our blueberries over top of the pan to make sure all the juices get in. Now, there is still a slightly bit frozen, so I'm going to just let this sit for half an hour to an hour. You got to make sure you get all the juices out, or it will get too runny and bubble in the oven, and then make everything look like the lattice will go underneath your blueberries, and it just won't look pretty. And remember, we're trying to sell. You can press down a little bit, but don't damage the berries too much. So let's just let it sit for a bit. Once all the juice is out, half an hour to an hour, pour the blueberries back into the pot. Start heating up those juices. Once it starts to boil, that's when we're going to add in the cornstarch slurry. Almost there. There we are. Now again, make sure you mix it up real nice before. You don't want to dump in giant chunks of cornstarch because it will thicken right away, and then you'll have weird starchy bits in there, it won't taste good at all. So anytime you're using cornstarch, or any starch for that matter, which is flour, anything, you want to make sure that it boils after you've poured it in to get rid of that starchy taste. Oh, look at that. Beautiful. I know it's shiny already, but adding this little bit of butter, after heating it, by the way, if you heat this with the butter inside, you destroy everything the butter was trying to do. But if you slightly heat, with the slightly heated stuff, add the butter, amazing shine. It's exactly what you want. And then you're going to pour this back into your blueberries, mix it up, and then let it cool before putting it into your dough. Or pie shell, sorry. Always make sure you're washing as you go. It's a great time saver. Then you don't have to come back and to a sink of like 100 dishes. Now onto the pie shell. I'm gonna warn you in advance, I mess up on this because I'm not paying attention to the pie shell. And this isn't like my glass ones where it has a huge lip. Because it doesn't have a huge lip, I don't put enough. I'm just being silly. It doesn't have enough dough on the edge. So what I'm going to have to do in the future is make sure I cut an extra inch over the edge to make sure that I have enough dough to seal it and to make the nice crimp around the edges. Because what you'll see later on is I have to add more dough and it doesn't look as pretty in the end. But if you do mess up like this, that's fine. You can always fix it and you'll see in the future how I do it. But as you can see, I'm going straight. But once the stuff gets in, whether it's the meat or the blueberries, that dough likes to fold inwards, and yeah, it gets to be a pain. Make sure you save all this excess and don't like knead it or anything. You don't want it to become a chewy mess, and then just put it off to the side because it's perfect to roll out one more time for the lattice or even the top. There we go. Slowly doing this. We're gonna do 3 pies, remember? 2 meat, 1 blueberry. It's so sad to watch this over again, knowing that I could just cut an extra inch off and it would work out perfectly. But you live and you learn. And another tool I'm going to be starting to use soon is scissors. It works so well for this. Just cutting around, then you're not using a knife, so it's not as dangerous. And it gets a nice cleaner cut as well. So we're on to the last pie now. Just rolling it out. Make sure you always do this with your rolling pin. If you just lift it up, it can easily tear from its weight. There's a lot of dough here, so be safe. Always roll it onto your rolling pin, then roll it on. There we go. Perfect. 3 beautiful pie shells with the slight mistake of not going over the edge more. So I would just go about an inch around the whole thing to get a nice outside. Then we're just going to pour all of the blueberries and split the meat pie into the 2. Work on the lattice for the blueberry and then cover the other 2. Obviously, make sure you spread it out. You don't want one side to have all the blueberries and the other side have none. Same with the meat. Make sure you're getting a good portion of meat, potatoes, carrots, celery. You don't want to put all the meat in one. You don't want to put all the potatoes in one. Any of that. Make sure it's nice and even. Those meat pies are looking delicious. So I'm going to show you using all these excess pieces. What you do. So you just barely scrunch them together back into a disc. Be very careful not to knead too much. I barely did anything and then I'm already rolling. I'm not going to try and fix anything because I'm just going to mainly cut off the edges to make it look nice. Then I'm going to slowly cut nice strips. I'm still working on the lettuce. I don't know exactly what I want yet. If I want wide, thin ones or thick, small ones. I messed up a bit. I was trying to figure out the lattice and how I was going to do it. But, yeah. I'm just going to do a simple one. 4 in one direction and 4 the other direction. Simple. I think I might go with fatter, thin lattice, but we'll see in the end. I also might change it to be a crimped cut, or I don't know how you'd call it, but so it's not just a straight cut. It has a little bit of design there. But you see how I'm struggling. There's not enough dough. So, I'm going to cheat, kind of, and just use some extra dough. Wrap it around. And then crimp that to make my nice pie. Now this does work, but again, I would have preferred to just add that extra inch, fold that extra inch inwards to make a nice crust, and yeah. You do what you gotta do, right? So all I'm doing is putting my thumb and pointer finger together, and then using my other thumb to press in to make that nice crimp around the whole pie. Then I'm just going to egg wash it, put it in the oven. Because my blueberry pie is cooked at 400 for a little bit of time, just get that beautiful crust, I'm going to put it in right away. Then it needs to be reduced in heat to where the meat pie is like, and I'll put those in when I reduce the heat. So I'm going to put the blueberry pie in for 12 minutes. I really should put this on a tray, and I do that later on because it makes it a lot easier to put it in and out. Just so you know, remember, 12 minutes. While that 12 minutes is going, I'm going to quickly roll out the tops. Get those meat pies ready, put them on a tray. I should be done in time. If you're a little slower, take your blueberry pie out. It doesn't matter if it cools. And then put the blueberry pie and the meat pie together. Remember, look at the timings on the recipe. So the meat pie likes to go in for an hour at 350. The blueberry pie is less. So always make sure that when you put the blueberry pie in and the meat pie in at that 350, put the timer on for the blueberry pie, take out the blueberry pie, and then add the extra minutes that you need for the meat pie. So to fix this meat pie, because I didn't have enough dough, I did that extra inch on the top instead of the bottom. If I did it the other way, I wouldn't have to do that, and I could just do covering the whole thing and have the bottom crust fold inwards to make this nice crust. Just a little excess dough. Perfect. Then we're going to crimp it like any of my other pies. Cut a nice star in the middle, and we're ready to go. Again, thumb, pointer finger, and your other thumb. Push together, push together. You get that nice, cool design. I'm just pressing down on the top to make sure it's nice and even spread of meat and vegetables, so that one side's not bigger than the other. And it's easier to feel it. So I like the star design with 4 big cuts and 4 small cuts. I think it just looks nice. Beautiful. Always make sure to egg wash before putting it in the oven to get that nice shine, nice color. It really makes the difference. If you don't put the egg wash, you might as well not even try and sell it. There we go. Always cut off your excess. Again, I'm cutting off about an inch extra away, so I can fold it in. Looking good. Crimp the last one. Egg wash, and we're almost done. I like using the bird speak knife here because it's got that curved blade. I don't cut all the way through. This pie shell's kind of weak, so it is possible that I could cut straight through it if I was using, let's say, a paring knife. So with the bird's beak, because it's curved, the worst I can ever do is poke a small little hole, versus with a paring knife I could poke all the way through. So I'm going to just dangerously flop this cake onto my hand. Don't do this. This was super scary. And then I'm just going to put it onto a tray to make it a lot easier. And then I'm going to egg wash all this. Put it in. So the blueberry pie, after that 12 minutes, needs to go in for 35 minutes. So after that 35 minutes is done, take your blueberry pie out. Obviously, because my oven's not the best, I have to put the meat pies up. I might have to add a few minutes just because of that, but we'll see. And then to get to that hour, add another 25 minutes. I know I put 20, but I'm just making sure I check it a little ahead of time. And I'm noticing there's a few spots that are a little raw, so I am going to need to put it back in for that extra 5 minutes. I should have known in the first place, but that's fine. Looking good. This is how the blueberry pie turned out. As you can see, the outside's a bit wonky, but that's not so bad. This is how the meat pie turned out. Perfect. Looking good. This has been the second part. You want a piece of me for Thanksgiving? If you've liked this video, please like and subscribe. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. I even have my own website. Thank you, and have a nice day.